Welcome to Rust Admin Academy, where we discuss everything and anything involved with owning and operating a Rust server. We're going to talk everything from starting your very own server to modding the hell out of it and everything in between. So stay tuned, check it out. Okay guys, so let's get started. You've decided to be an admin of your own Rust server, which is great. It's fun, it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's rewarding. It can be rewarding. The first thing you need to have is an actual server to be working with. So I'm going to walk you through the process required to have your own Rust server. So let's get started on that. All right, so first things first, let's create a folder where we want this server to exist. So I'm just going into C drive and creating a folder. We're going to call this YouTube. Let's call it YouTube. Works for me. And we'll go inside there for now. The next thing we need is an application called steamcmd. And you can just Google that. And for the Windows version, and that's all we're going to talk about is the Windows version because I don't speak Linux. There are some Linux steps here that you can follow if that's the language that you prefer to work in. I prefer the Windows environment because that's what I know. So that's what we're going to go with here. So Windows, we want to download this file right here. So now we're going to take that and we're going to extract it into the folder that we just created called YouTube. So extract, C drive, YouTube, there we go. And once we have that, you can just run this application here. What this is doing is actually installing steamcmd so that you can actually do stuff. While we're waiting for that to go, I'm going to create another folder where the server is actually going to reside. And we're just going to call this folder test server. I just want to rename this and you'll see why this is important later. All right, so let's reopen Steam. All right, so this is the environment that we use in order to install Rust server side. Though what you guys are probably accustomed to seeing is the client side, but what we want to install here is the server side. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started on that. So we need to remember that this is where we want it to live. So C drive, YouTube, test server, right? Okay. So once we're in the Steam environment, we want to log in, and you can log in anonymously. So just log in anonymous like that. You can also log in with your own Steam ID. I don't really see an advantage to that. If you have obviously you'll have your password and everything like that, but if you have the two-step authentication, then it will prompt you for that. And you can, if you're using two-step, then you know what it's all about and it works the exact same way. However, I don't really see a need for it. You can just log in anonymously. And it's going to ask you for permission to access your network. We want to grant it permission. Okay, so now what's important here? So we need to know this exact address right here. So what I do is I just copy it. It prevents any opportunities for mistakes to be made, which are quite easy to do. So we want to learn how to spell, force install dir, and then we're just going to paste that address in here. So this is telling steamcmd where to install the following application that we're about to do next. So this is just telling it where to go. And now we're going to tell it what to do. Now we want to do app_update 258550. That 258550 is Rust. It's the Rust server side application. So this is what we're doing. And for the first time, I always do validate. You don't have to, but it just revalidates the files. It's just a common practice. So depending on your internet connection, this might take like 5 or 10 minutes. It might take you 30 seconds. I don't know. For me personally, it takes about 5 minutes. But obviously I'm going to edit this video so that for you guys, it's over. And okay, so as you can see, mine has finished installing and everything like that. And now my folder is filled up with all of this stuff right here, which is the Rust. Okay, so now what do we do from here? We are done with steamcmd, so we can close that out. So now what we need to do is create what's called a batch file, which is a Windows executable file that it basically starts your server up. So we need to, let's get started on that. We need to get that going. So there are a couple of different ways that you can get this to happen. This is the way that I do it. There are probably different ways. There are probably easier ways. I'm not sure. So what I do is I just open up a notepad, and I just, with the blank document, I go to save as, I go to all files, and then I do like whatever we want to call this server. So like a server, we'll just call this test server startup. And you want to do .bat, which then creates this file into a batch file. Anyway, so then we can go back and delete this. And this is now our startup file. So, and I use Notepad++ to edit my batch files. It just lays out things way, way, way easier. All right, so what do we need to have inside this file? If you jump on Google, you're gonna find, if you just search for like a generic Rust startup batch file, you're gonna see there's tons of different options out there. I already have one here, and I'm just gonna copy and paste it, and then I'm gonna tell you what each one of these components is doing, and then what I like to do to clean it up a little bit. So this is just a generic. You have to make changes to this. You can't just be like, okay, I'm done and we're good to go. So the first, like, you just want to go through it step by step and make sure that everything is lining up properly. So for example, okay, I'll start at the very beginning. This echo off, you can have this in there. You don't necessarily have to. What this does is it makes it so that your console that fires up, you'll see what it looks like, what I mean by console here in a couple minutes. What this does is it makes it so that it doesn't show each individual line of your batch file starting up, because it can be quite extensive and it's completely pointless. You don't need to watch that stuff happen. So you put this echo off in there, it turns that off so you don't have to see it. This next line here is the beginning command of basically a loop, which we've started right here, which is handy if your server ever crashes and closes itself out. It can automatically restart itself if you've got these two lines right here in there. It's handy. Don't depend on it though. It doesn't always work. When a Rust server fails, it doesn't necessarily like crash out or close completely. It basically just hangs up or stalls infinitely, in which case this will do you no benefit, and then you have to manually go in, close down your server, and physically restart it. But that's okay, we can get into that later. All right, so the next line here is we need to know where steamcmd is. Okay, so we installed it earlier, so we already know where it is. So it's in this folder right here, c:/youtube/steamcmd, and then the exe is steamcmd. All right, so we need to replicate that in here, and the easiest way to do that is just to copy and paste it and make it look exactly the same. So now we're telling it to go into this folder and execute this program right here. And what you've seen before is we log in anonymously and we force the install to go to this server. Okay, so this is another section that we need to make sure is correct. So we need to grab this actual address in your computer and make sure that this is exactly the same. So we're going to c:/youtube/test server, and then we do app update and then quit. So what this does when we run this batch file, it's basically going to update your server to the latest version that's available from Facepunch. We can also put in validate here, which just validates the files. You don't necessarily have to, but if you run into problems, that's the first step that you're going to do, is you want to validate those files. Okay, so that gets us up to the current version of Rust. So the next thing is we're going to run RustDedicated.exe, which is right here. We're going to run it in batch mode, basically. So there's no human interaction required for this to continue going on and executing all of these further commands. All right. So starting here, this is where you get to determine what you want with your server. Okay, so everyone in the world that starts up their server, the default is port 28015. You can make that whatever you want, just as long as you have whatever port this is. You have to make sure that you have that port available on your computer, your router, modem, whatever it is that you're using to access the internet with wherever this server is installed. Okay, so in my case, I'm using 28010. You can use whatever you want. So this server level command is you can change the different types of maps that your server is using. Obviously, this one is default. It just comes up as, you'll hear a lot of people refer to it as procgen, procedural map, procedurally generated map. I mean, whatever. There's different ways you can, people are going to call it different things all over the internet. There are obviously a couple of different ways you can use this command. You can change it to Baron, you can change it to Savis, you can change it to King of the Hill, and you can do all that right here. Now, the important part with that is, let's say, so it's Savis Island and King of the Hill. You want to take this command out, this server seed, because you can't specify a seed when you're telling it to use Savis or King of the Hill or Happus Island. So take that out, because they're already their dedicated seeds. You can't change that, and it could create an error in your batch file, and it would prevent your server from loading properly. So anyways, we're going to do a procgen. Go to playrust.io. There's a map generator on there, or like a map selector, where you can go through and you can see every map that is available to you. It'll spit you out a server seed as well as a server size, and then you can put that information in your batch file, and that will be the map that you will use on your server. All right, so carrying on, let's just do, I'm just going to change this here just so that you can actually see what it looks like. So server world size default is a 4K map, or 4000 right here. I'm going to change this to a little bit smaller just to increase the load time. The 4K maps, depending on what your hardware is that you're using, can take up to like 3 minutes to load. So a 3K map might load a little bit faster for us. Max server players, this is pretty self-explanatory. You can change this to whatever you want to start out with. And this is kind of where a little bit of experience is going to come into play. If you come in here and you create a server, let's actually make it more extreme. If you create a server that has 250 slots available for players, and you can't get 3 people to your server, when you're in the directory of Rust servers available, you're going to look like a, I don't know what the word is. You're gonna look like a dead server if you do that. You're gonna say, okay, I have enough room for 250 people in my server, but I can only get 3 or 1. I can only get myself in there. So it basically, what it comes down to is I want your server size to grow with your experience and with your population. Okay. So I don't like to start out at 250 open slots for my servers. Even 50 is a little bit high. You have to think of how a Rust player is looking when they're looking through the server listings, trying to decide if they're going to jump into your server or not. Does it look better to them to have 25 people, or 25 available slots, or 50 available slots, or 75 available slots? It's a tough call, and it's really only experience is going to tell you which one works better for you. When I first start out a brand new fresh server, I like to start it out at 25. If I can get 25 players that are in my server consistently day in and day out, that's a really good start for a server. Don't open up a server with 150 slots and expect it to populate. It's just not going to happen, and you're going to get frustrated and annoyed. So don't set yourself up for failure. And while this is just a small little command line, it's important because it's going to determine how things work for you. Next one is the server host name. This is what you want to show up as the name of your server when people are in the game directory. So we can do YouTube test server for SRT bull. You can put literally whatever you want in there. Make sure it's inside of quotations, and this is exactly how it's going to show up in the server directory. Server description is obviously the box down below your server title. Once they click on it, and you can put in literally again whatever you want here. You want to make it something, give the player some information about your server. So the last time the map was wiped, last time the blueprints were wiped, maybe the next time the blueprints are going to be wiped, and the next time the map is going to be wiped. Just make sure you're giving your player some information here. I'm just going to put this in. Last wipe was blah blah blah, and next wipe is whenever I feel like it. And if you, okay, so you can do multiple lines in here as well. When you want to do another line, you want to do \n and then just keep writing. So what, right, learn how to spell first here for a second. Oh my goodness. And so that line break will obviously go down and keep writing that information. You can't just hit enter and expect it to go down the next line. You have to put in that \n. Okay, so the next one is server URL, which you can put in your website or your clan address or whatever it is that you whatever you've got for a website, you can put that information in there. Server header image is the picture that comes up once they click on your server. It'll show the server the image as well as the description below it. I don't have one readily available, so I'm just going to leave that blank for right now. Okay, so this server identity is how it's going to show up in here, so that it makes it super easy to identify which server you're dealing with. Now that's really only important if you're going to run multiple servers out of the same folder that we're in right now. So you can name this something that is easily identifiable. So we'll do YouTube test server, test server. There we go. Now, when I run this batch file, you're going to see it'll create a new folder called server. And then inside that folder, it's going to say YouTube test server. And that's where it's going to have all the information that is required for this specific server. Okay, so the rcon port, so you remember earlier we changed our port number to 28010, so I'm going to change this to 28011, so it's just one more port ahead of whatever the server port is. And the rcon password, and you're going to want to change this password. Obviously don't leave it as this. You can change it to literally whatever you want, and it is going to be the password that's required to access your server if you're going to use an rcon program such as like Rusty or there's quite a few different rcon programs out there that we can get into. If you guys want to see what I'm talking about, I can definitely do another really short video on the different rcon programs out there. Just shoot a comment down below, let me know if that's something that you guys want to see. And then rcon.web 1, which makes this so that our batch file is allowing this server to be accessed by web rcon. Okay, so this is a pretty good start. This server, I could save this right now and boot it up and it will load. So let's do that just so that I can actually see that I'm right. So we've saved it and we're going to do test server startup. Okay, so this is exactly what it's going to look like. So earlier we told it to log into steamcmd. We told it to put the latest server information into this folder. It's all doing that right now. So this is going to look very similar to what you've seen when you actually installed it the first time, because it's literally doing the exact same thing over again. So we'll just wait for this to finish. Maybe we'll do a magic snap of the fingers. Okay, so this is what it looks like once your server is up and running and everything was successful. It tells you the information you need to know. This is in-game time. This is how many players are on the server right now. Obviously, we haven't gone in yet, so it's not going to give any information there, which you'll see me enter here in a minute. And then your title that you determined earlier, and whether it's a proc-gen map, and then there's a bunch of actual server information down here, FPS, stuff like that. All important information. I'm not trying to glaze that over, but it's not going to be very important to you right now. So I wanted to touch on this as well. So like I said earlier, once you run this batch file, it's going to create this folder called server. And inside that server is going to be your specific server. Now this folder has some very important information in it, stuff that you need to protect in order to maintain a secure server. So I'll just go over a couple of different things here. The config folder, okay, there's nothing in there yet, and I'll explain why here in a second. So once we actually load into this server, and you can give yourself admin abilities, or if you need to give other players moderator abilities and stuff like that, all that information is going to show up in here, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. This other stuff down here is an actual map save of your server. So you want to this file right here, if something catastrophic happens and you needed to reload your server or something like that, this information right here would save everything over, player information, their inventories, their bases and stuff like that, as long as you got the most latest save before whatever catastrophic happened. Another one of the things that we should have put into the batch file is a server save duration, so how long it waits between each time it saves. That's an important one. The bigger a server gets, the more information it has to save each time it does it. So like if you're saving every 30 seconds or something like that, the players are going to notice that, because it's going to create a bit of a stall right when it does that save. So maybe when you're first starting out, like just do a save every 5 minutes or something like that. And then, you know, you want to, it's hard to say. It's one of those things that you have to experience for yourself so that you know how, because it creates that lull when it actually saves, your players are going to feel it. So if you have 100 people in there or 75 people in there, you don't want it stalling out every 5 minutes while your server saves. While it is important to make the save, you don't want to annoy your players with it. So it's kind of a balance, and it's going to be tough for you to figure out. This other file right here is player blueprints. So when a player learns a new blueprint, that information is then saved into this file right here. So what that means to you as a server owner is, when you want to wipe your map, you delete this file with your server offline. When you want to wipe blueprints, you delete this file with your server offline. This will, if you delete this file and restart your server again, all blueprints that were learnt will be gone. Okay, so all right, so we're gonna get into the server here, and okay, let me switch that. Okay, so this is, obviously we're in game here, and we want to log into our server, and so we know we're going to do client connect, and we're going to do the address of whatever the computer is that's hosting this server. Oh, sorry, I should have shown that. Anyway, you do client.connect, and then the IP address of wherever the server is located, and then colon, and then the port. So in our case, we are port number 28010. So all that information was in there. I don't know if you caught it or not. I just did it quickly, and I shouldn't have. I should have been explaining it as I went along. All right, so as you can see, this is us in the server that we just created. And I'll show you what it looks like from the server side. So as you can see, this is me. I've just logged into my server, and that's what it looks like. So now this has changed to 1 out of the 25 slots available. This is me. So I'm going to grab my Steam 64 ID, and I'll explain why here in a second. So close that, open this up. Okay, so as a server owner, you have a lot of responsibilities, we'll say. So right off the bat, you are just like a regular player. You can't fly, you can't spawn things in, you're just a regular player. You can't do anything, okay? So we need to change that. If you're gonna moderate or admin a server, you need to have specific abilities. So this is how we're gonna do this. So if you want yourself or another player to be able to fly around or spawn things in or kick or ban people, you need to give them what's called auth level 1 or auth level 2. So auth level 2 is admin. You are basically the god of the server. You can do whatever you want. Moderators are considered auth level 1. So we're going to do owner ID, and then we're going to paste my Steam64 ID in there. And then we also want to give this a name, and I'll show what that does here in a second. I'm going to put quotations because it'll save you a lot of headache later. If it's just a single word as the name that you're going to use, you don't necessarily have to put this in quotations, but if you want to have a space in here, you can use spaces, but this has to be inside quotations. Okay, so owner ID, my Steam64 ID, and then a name or something that's going to help you identify it later, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we're going to do that. If you have like a friend of yours that you don't necessarily want to have full control over your setup, you can do moderator ID, and then their Steam64 ID, same thing with a name, and you can use the quotations if there's spaces in their name or not, if they don't have spaces in their name. So this command is going to make me the admin of this server. Okay, we need to do a write CFG after we make any of those changes. So while I'm at this, you can also, let's say you want to demote somebody or you want to fire somebody from their admin position, you have to do remove owner ID and then their Steam64. You don't have to put their name in there, but you have to do remove owner ID and then their Steam64. And then once you've done that, you have to do write CFG again. Anytime you do write CFG, obviously it's writing to the folder right here, CFG. So now this has generated files in there where there wasn't any there before. So this is showing you all of the information that you need for your server. So we did a write CFG. So this made me the admin of the server, as well as the name that we put in there. Okay. Oh yeah, you can also add a reason in there, but I mean the reasons are pretty obvious. When you ban people, that list of names will show up here. So it'll show their name, their Steam64 ID, as well as the reason for the ban, as long as you did it at the time of the banning. Okay, so we can go back to gameplay. Okay, so right now, I am the admin of the server. Okay, so in theory, I should be able to spawn things in, right? No, why can't I do that? So when you promote somebody or give them auth level 1 or 2, they are required to relog. So you can just do quickly disconnect and then reconnect, and you should be, are you seeing that? So it shows me disconnecting, and I'm going to reconnect. And now you're seeing me reconnect, and now it says Bull has auth level 2. Okay, so as you can see here, I've re-entered the game. I disconnected up here, and now I've re-entered the game, which is called a relog. Okay, so now when we go into the game, now I can respawn, or I can spawn items in as much as I want. Boom, just like that. Okay, and literally you can do anything and everything you want from this menu as an admin. And I have some caution and warnings here for you that I'm going to get into here in a little bit. But let me just finish this up here real quick. We'll get the most important stuff out of the way, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about what it's like being an admin and some mines that you need to avoid tripping. Okay, so a couple of things that we need to do. No, go back into the game. All right, so your F1 menu is going to be your best friend. So there's a couple of different things that we want to be able to do. First and foremost is spawning things in. That's what every player thinks they want to be able to do in game, is spawn stuff in. So I showed you that we have the ability to do that now. Auth level 1 and auth level 2 both have the ability to do that, okay? The next thing that you want to be able to do is fly around, right? So here, I'll show you what it looks like to fly around. And this is the other thing that every other Rust player wishes that they could do is, right? So let me show you how to do that real quick. So in your F1 console menu, you want to, the easiest way to do this is to bind it to a key. Yes, you might accidentally press that key and all of a sudden find yourself flying around, and that's a problem. But it is the easiest way to do it. So just do bind. I do bind L, no clip. Okay, so if I hit enter right now, it's going to bind the command no clip to my L button on my keyboard. So anytime I press L, I will fly around like this. This is me pressing L. Okay, and the other one that we want to be able to do, or actually there's two more that I want you to be able to do, is called a debug camera. Okay, you've probably seen the debug camera used more often than you actually think. Maybe you're seeing it and you don't actually know what it's called. So this is what the debug camera looks like. So this is my character right here, and as you can see, I have full camera control, but my character is not moving. This is what's called the debug camera, and this comes in very handy when you're trying to, let's say you're trying to catch a hacker or somebody that you suspect of cheating. This is a really good way of catching them doing that, because you can be flying around with this camera, but the player sees nothing. You're literally just an invisible camera flying around the game right now, and if a player is doing something sketch, they wouldn't know that you're watching them. Okay, so that's the debug camera. So I'm just going to turn that off, and it takes me back to my character, and I'll show you how to do that. So same as we did before, bind L. We're going to do, and you can make this whatever you want, but I do bind P debug camera. So that's what that looks like right there. So anytime I press P on my keyboard, it releases me out of my character, gives me full camera control like this. And there are some features to the camera that are quite handy and very useful for people that are doing cinematics. Like, as you can see, it's quite twitchy and quite quick movements and stuff like that. And you can make them very fluid movements and smooth and stuff like that if you're doing cinematics with your server and stuff like that for recording and stuff like that. So I can show you how to do that. If you guys want to know how to do that, just shoot a comment down below, and I'll it would be a really quick video, and I'd show you how to do it. So the other thing that I want you to be able to do is called entity kill. Okay, so let me just show you what I mean by that. Do this, this, and this. I'm going to why is it that you can never find what you're looking for when you're looking for it? Items, we want, there we go. We want a blueprint. There we go. All right, so we've got a bunch of wood and a blueprint, and we're just going to go down here and kill something really quick, but I got to build it first. So let's say somebody has built something that violates your rules of your server, or let's say they've made a sign and let's say they have some racist comments or pictures or something like that on their sign, and you just want to get rid of that sign. So the quickest and easiest way to do that is what's called an entity kill. Okay, so this is what an entity kill looks like. So you can see I have nothing in my hands. I'm not doing remove. I'm not doing anything. I can just press a button and it kills whatever that entity is that I'm looking at. Okay, very handy. If you, like I said, if you want to get rid of something that violates the rules of your server, or if there's tons of different uses for this. If you need to help a player that's been griefed by another player, you can use that by taking out their doors or their TCs or whatever. There's tons of different uses for it. Anyway, I'll show you how to do that. And same as before, it's a bind. You want to bind it to a key. I use my K button because it's not used for anything else in game, so I use bind K ent kill. You can make that whatever you want. I think the default one is actually H, but I found that I accidentally hit H more often than I wanted to, so I was actually killing entities when I didn't mean to be killing entities. So there we go, and there we have it. You have a server, you are the admin, you can spawn things, you can kill things, you can fly around, you can literally do anything you want. Okay. This video has turned into a much longer video than I thought it was going to. There are a lot of other commands that I wanted to be able to show you guys. I'm going to have to do a follow-up video, so maybe I'll do a part 2 of getting started. And so anyways, we're going to shut this video down at this point right now. Be sure to stay tuned for part 2 of this video. The next video that I'm going to do, we're actually going to be installing Oxide onto this very same server. If you don't know what Oxide is, it's the basically an extension which allows you to mod your server. If you want to increase gather rates, you want to be able to do /home, you want to do /teleport, you want to be able to whatever you want to do. I'm sure you've seen what kind of different mods you can do on different servers. It's Oxide that allows you to do that. The next video is going to show you guys how to install Oxide. It's super quick and easy. And then we're going to start getting into playing around with some plugins and stuff like that. Anyways, if you guys found this video helpful, be sure to smash that like button. It costs you nothing, takes no effort on your part, just a simple click, but it helps me out huge. If you'd like to see more content coming about the Rust Admin Academy, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notification bells so that you get notified as soon as I upload a new video. There's going to be a lot of great content coming. And as I'm sure, because you're watching this, you know that there's very little information out there about how to use plugins, how to make them work, what to do when you run into problems and stuff like that. I'm going to get into all that stuff. I want to share all my experiences with you guys over the past 3 years. It's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road. Anyways, I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll see you guys in the next one.